Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, pleading the fifth. Former President Donald Trump under oath, declining to answer hundreds of questions from the New York Attorney General's office. More on his hours-long deposition in the civil investigation into his business practices, including the only question he did answer. Plus, new information about the FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. We have team coverage this morning. Signs of relief. Some good economic news breaking overnight. The national average of gasoline now falling below $4 a gallon as House lawmakers prepare to pass the president's Inflation Reduction Act. We'll take a look at the next steps on Capitol Hill and how soon it could be signed into law. Plus, we'll break down what's in it and what it all means for your wallet. Fire with fire. Controversy in classrooms across America over several proposals to arm school officers with rifles.
If they do come to my school, I want my resource officers to have the ability to meet violence with violence.
The renewed debate following a series of deadly school shootings. And flipping the script, a new show shining a spotlight on the Black immigrant experience, written by someone who knows exactly what it's like. Joe will introduce us to the co-creator of a new series out today, plus how he's holding the door open for the next generation of Black creatives in Hollywood. And if you caught what I said at the top there, flipping the script, it's a new series we're starting.
Yes, new series, and that is Mike Goyo, who has a new show coming out today. So we're excited to bring you that conversation.
Yeah, and we'll keep doing it throughout the week.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, we'll get into that later this hour. We begin this morning, though, with the latest on those legal challenges the former president is facing in 2 different states.
One of those states is New York, where Donald Trump invoked his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination during a 4-hour deposition. Now, that deposition is part of the New York State Attorney General's civil investigation into the Trump Organization's business practices. The AG's office alleges that the company inflated financial statements which were signed off on by the former president. And just one day earlier, on Monday in Florida, FBI agents searched Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. That is part of an investigation into classified documents that Trump is alleged to have kept after leaving office. In a statement released yesterday, Trump cited that search as part of his reasoning for invoking the Fifth Amendment in the New York deposition. He said, quote, "If there was any question in my mind, the raid of my home, Mar-a-Lago, on Monday wiped out any uncertainty. I have absolutely no choice because the current administration and many prosecutors in this country have lost all moral and ethical bounds of decency." A senior Justice Department official and a former DOJ official tell NBC News about a growing push within the department for Attorney General Merrick Garland to address the motives behind the search in a public statement. We're going to dig into all of this for you this morning. In just a moment, NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos on all of the issues facing Trump. But let's start off with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley for the latest on the investigations in both New York and Florida. Vaughn, let's start with you. What more can you tell us about this deposition yesterday, including the former president?
This was a deposition that was a long time coming, Joe. This is a situation in which Don Jr., as well as Eric and Ivanka Trump, had already been deposed by the New York Attorney General's office. Ultimately, lawyers for Donald Trump agreed to sit down with the New York Attorney General's office. We're told that Letitia James, the Attorney General herself, was in there for multiple hours with Donald Trump. But the important part of this is that Donald Trump, our producer Adam Reese, has been told by a source familiar, invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 440 times yesterday over the course of those more than 40 hours, only answering his name when questioned. So this is a situation here in which the New York Attorney General's office is looking at the extent to which the Trump Organization potentially inflated the valuation of its assets in order to receive tax benefits and other financial benefits. I want to let you look at part of the statement, though, put out yesterday by the former president, in which he was talking about this deposition and his decision to invoke the Fifth Amendment. He said in part, quote, "I once asked, if you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Now I know the answer to that question. When your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt, supported by lawyers, prosecutors, and the fake news media, you have no choice." Of course, there has been no evidence presented that any of these investigations are not without merit. At the same time, the former president has not been charged, and these are civil proceedings taking place with the New York Attorney Attorney General's office, Joe.
All right, so Vaughn, you are standing near Mar-a-Lago. Ryan, I want to ask you about the latest on that search at Mar-a-Lago. As you report, the DOJ and FBI have been quiet about this, perhaps quieter than usual given the high stakes. So why is that, and could that change? Could they decide to put more information out there because the former president is controlling so much of the narrative right now?
You're exactly right in that Donald Trump is really controlling the narrative on this and has basically been telling the story. The vast overwhelming majority of information that was coming out about this search is coming from Trump and from his camp, Donald Trump's broader camp. A lot of the lawyers have been sharing information with reporters, and DOJ is really can't emphasize this enough, been playing this by the book. It's been very difficult to just get basic details of confirmations. Typically, when there's a search and there's law enforcement activity, you'll even be able to confirm just an address, right? You can give the address of Mar-a-Lago, for example, and say, okay, was there law enforcement activity here? And they'll come back and say, we can confirm there was law enforcement, court-authorized law enforcement activity at that location. Even that was a struggle with this case. So they're really just playing it by the book and making sure that they follow every single protocol of DOJ, because they know this is going to go and be looked over with a fine-tooth comb, that every part of this and every step of the way is going to be highly scrutinized by Republicans in Congress. It's just such a high-profile matter. There is some pushback within DOJ, as NBC News has reported, about the idea that this is a moment that calls for DOJ to sort of break those protocols and give more information about this ongoing probe. But I think that it's highly unlikely from Merrick Garland. I think he's been extremely clear that he wants to follow these protocols. He is a by-the-book sort of guy and has emphasized that throughout the course of his time as Attorney General of the United States.
Vaughn, we did see the FBI director, Christopher Wray, take some questions yesterday. He was asked about the growing calls for online violence, including threats circulating online against federal agents in the DOJ after that search at Mar-a-Lago. What did the director have to say about all that?
Yeah, actually, Joe, if I could, of course, the director was asked about the search warrant that was executed here by his agents here at Mar-a-Lago, and he said that he is not able to talk about the investigation. As Ryan was just pointing out here, that is that gap and that is that void, but that's not for a lack of us not seeing him. He was there in Nebraska yesterday, and instead he did comment on these threats here. Our Ben Collins, a reporter who has covered disinformation and the serious nature in which elements of the dark web have talked about violence here in the United States against federal officials here. This is a situation in which Ben has outlined the direct threats. We're talking about civil war. We're talking about violence against these very officials at the highest levels of government here. I want to let you hear from Director Wray address some of these threats.
As to the issue of threats, I will say that I'm always concerned about violence and threats of violence against law enforcement, and any threats made against law enforcement, including the men and women of the FBI, as with any law enforcement agency, are deplorable and dangerous.
We are not familiar with any acts of violence here at this point over the last 70 hours or so since that raid commenced here. At the same time, we all watched what unfolded on January 6, 2021, and that is such a large part of the reason why these threats are taken so seriously.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard and Ryan Riley, thanks for kicking us off this hour. We appreciate it.
Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos. Danny, good morning. So let's start with this deposition by New York Attorney General in this investigation with the New York Attorney General. What do you make first of his use of the Fifth Amendment, just how much it was used? Was his team correctly invoking that right here?
If I were advising Donald Trump, I'd probably tell him to do the same thing, which is invoke the Fifth Amendment and refuse to answer questions in a deposition. But that choice comes with some heavy consequences. While it's true that the assertion of the Fifth can't be used against you and by the way, the Fifth Amendment is the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. It's the privilege against self-incrimination. You can't be compelled in a criminal case to be witness against himself. But as you can see there from the on screen, but it means more than that. It really means that the government can never compel you to speak or testify in a way that would incriminate you, and that includes in civil proceedings. And while what he says in invoking the Fifth can't be used against him in a criminal case, it absolutely can be used against him in a civil proceeding. And what I expect is that Trump's attorneys deemed that an acceptable risk and told him to assert the Fifth in answer to questions at a civil deposition.
Now, New York Attorney General Letitia James says her team is considering filing a civil case against Trump. How would his refusal to answer questions impact that? Does it?
It does. In any civil proceeding, a jury, for example, can draw a negative inference from the assertion of the Fifth Amendment. It's a little tricky, but basically it means that the jury or a fact finder can take the evidence that the other side has and assume that the witness who refused to answer just didn't have any evidence to counter it. So that can be a very devastating thing for a civil case. But a witness may decide that, well, I'll take the loss on my civil case if it means that I will avoid criminal culpability or criminal prosecution. Now, the real world consequence also is that when somebody asserts the Fifth Amendment, that perks up the ears of law enforcement. While they can't use that silence against the witness, they certainly can say, I think there's something afoot here. We should look into this. But in Trump's case, I mean, at this point, what isn't being looked into? I can't imagine anyone's in state or federal law enforcement's ears were perked about this that weren't already perked before.
So, Danny, what's next? Where does the Attorney General's office go from here?
They continue their investigation. Surely they anticipated that he might take the Fifth Amendment in a deposition. They continue to investigate. He's not the only source of their information. And they go forward. I think they even see this as a win, both politically, because Trump has publicly asserted the Fifth after years ago saying that only guilty people essentially take the Fifth Amendment, but also procedurally, now they have an assertion of the Fifth Amendment, which they will probably try to use against him and have whatever fact finder in whatever case they may bring draw a negative inference against the former president.
All right, Danny Savalas, thank you so much.
The Justice Department has charged an Iranian national with plotting to kill former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. And we're learning it could have been part of a larger alleged plot targeting even more officials. NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell reports.
The Department of Justice unsealed charging documents revealing an Iranian murder plot against John Bolton, the Trump National Security Advisor. The individual charged, Shahram Poursafi, is an Iranian national believed to be located in Tehran and a member of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Justice Department alleges that he was working on behalf of the IRGC and starting in October 2021 attempted to pay U.S. nationals $300,000 to carry out the murder on U.S. soil in Washington, D.C. or in Maryland. The DOJ believes the attempted murder was in retaliation for the U.S. assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the commander of the Quds Force, the Special Operations Division of the Revolutionary Guard. That happened back in January 2020, after John Bolton had left the administration, but he was well known as a hardliner on Iran. He was also one of the architects of the maximum pressure campaign the Trump administration waged against Iran, and he was a leading critic of the Iran nuclear deal, which is in the final make-or-break stages of negotiations for the U.S. and Iran to re-enter that agreement, possibly soon. Iran was designated a state sponsor of terror by the Trump White House, and as part of those talks, Iran had demanded that the U.S. lift the terror label. But the Biden administration has steadfastly refused to do that. And this incident likely demonstrates exactly why. In a statement released today, Bolton said, "I wish to thank the Justice Department for initiating the criminal proceeding unsealed today, the FBI for its diligence in discovering and tracking the Iranian regime's criminal threat to American citizens, and the Secret Service for once again providing protection against Tehran's efforts." Bolton has had Secret Service protection since December because of threats against his life, like this one. The Justice Department saying, "This is not the first time we have uncovered Iranian plots to exact revenge against individuals on U.S. soil, and we will work tirelessly to expose and disrupt every one of these efforts." We are trying to reach the Iranian government for comment. Back to you.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you.
And now to the economy and your money, and some good news this morning for everyone trying to catch a break at the pump. According to AAA, the national average price of a gallon of regular gas has now fallen below $4 a gallon, just below to $3.99. That's a major drop, though, from the peak of nearly $5 a gallon in mid-June. This comes after some encouraging news yesterday that the pace of inflation may also be slowing down a bit, and as lawmakers in Washington work to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. The Senate passed the bill over the weekend in a marathon weekend vote, and the House is expected to take it up tomorrow. It's considered the centerpiece of President Biden's economic agenda, and the bill is dividing Congress along party lines. The massive spending bill is aimed at easing the strain on your wallet as well as controlling the climate crisis, and it offers major savings on prescription drugs and health insurance premiums. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa joins us now to take a look at what's in this and how it could help you save more. Ali, good morning. So this bill has a lot to do with climate change, but there's also quite a few health care benefits in here. First, let's talk about that. How would the bill benefit seniors on Medicare specifically? I know there's some big changes here.
Yeah, Savannah. Well, first of all, just schedule-wise, we heard House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced yesterday that this will be taken up in the House, and it has a very good chance of passing there. Remember, Democrats technically don't need Republican support to get it passed in the House tomorrow and send it to President's desk. But as you mentioned there, one of the massive provisions in this bill is related to health care, negotiating drug prices. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying that one of the health care provisions in this starts next year, and it will allow Americans to not have to pay more than $2,000 out of pocket for prescription drugs. Another major provision in this bill is Medicare will now be able to start negotiating directly with drug companies. That's something that won't take effect, unfortunately, until 2026. But one controversial provision in this bill had to do with insulin pricing, and that has to do with Medicare patients who will now not have to pay more than $35 a month for insulin. That was after several Republican senators blocked that cap from being extended to just normal Americans with private insurance. That was an extremely controversial move, something that Democrats have already seized on and started campaigning on, attacking their Republican opponents ahead of the midterm election, Savannah.
Now let's talk about the climate piece of this. What are those benefits there? What stands out for you? I know there's these electric vehicle credits, things that you can do in your house that means you get some credits. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a historic investment in clean energy, in climate change, really the biggest in this nation's history. It includes $369 billion in funding to fight global warming and invest in clean energy. There's $369 billion, as I mentioned, that will encompass several provisions that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer laid out, really saying that it'll make electrical costs for your home go down. It'll boost manufacturing of electrical vehicles, boost the manufacturing of electrical appliances. It'll also cut carbon emissions around 40% from 2005 levels by the year 2030 by using more clean power, solar, wind. So this is definitely a historic deal for Democrats. Some of them were not happy with how far this went. They thought it could go farther, but this is definitely being seen as a win, a victory lap for the Biden administration. And Democrats are saying that this isn't the end, that this streak of legislative victories isn't the end for them. They say they're going to come back after this August recess and do more and try to keep the focus and attention of voters on their legislative victories ahead of the midterm, Savannah.
All right, Ali Rafa, thank you so much.
Some breaking weather news overnight. Flash flooding in Washington, D.C. caught many residents by surprise. As much as 4 inches of rain fell in some neighborhoods.
And Bill Cairns joins us again this week with more. Hi, Bill. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. In this video of Rhode Island Avenue, this is northwest portions of the Washington, D.C. area, and that's where we had this extreme flooding. And the owner of this shop says this is the 3rd time that the road is flooded in the last 3 weeks. So I know we've had at least 2 really big rainstorms in northwest portions of D.C., but maybe they have some drainage issues there also along with that interstate. But yeah, when you get 3 inches of rain in a quick period of time, there's not many drainage systems that can handle that volume of water. water. So yeah, look at that. It's like being in a fishbowl. All right, so here's what we're going to deal with today. The flash flood threat is diminishing. That is great news for our friends in Kentucky, West Virginia, and also Virginia and the D.C. area. So the cooler air will be moving in. We have one little last batch of heavy rain. It has been impacting areas from Philadelphia to just south in New York City and all through New Jersey during the morning. This is about to head off the coast. It looks like Long Island will get soaked, so expect things to be a little slow. We could have some minor airport problems there at JFK Airport and also maybe possibly at LaGuardia, but that should clear up pretty quickly this morning. As far as other areas of concern for today, as this front drops to the south, we will see additional areas of heavy rain and thunderstorms, but it will be in areas like Tennessee, North Carolina. We'll have to watch the mountains from Asheville to Knoxville to Boone to make sure we don't get any flash flooding. We'll also see some periods of very heavy rain around Charleston and Savannah. Of course, Charleston, anytime it pours, you do get some areas of localized flash flooding. And then into Friday, we mostly keep that thunderstorm threat to eastern North Carolina and around Charleston to Myrtle Beach and the Georgetown areas there of South Carolina. So as far as heavy rainfall goes, if we're going to see any flash flooding over the next couple of days, we'll have to watch the Carolina coast and also our friends from Lake Charles to New Orleans, Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City. That area could get soaked as we go throughout the next couple of afternoons. So for today's forecast, the cool, beautiful Canadian air is on the way in. Chicago, suck it up and enjoy it today. 78, that's it for your high with sunshine. Same goes for Detroit and Cleveland. And eventually, that's what will move into New York. And everyone will love your Friday forecast from Virginia northwards. D.C., 82 and sunny. Same for New York and Boston and Philly. That's the reward day, guys, for all the hot, humid weather we've had lately. Unfortunately, our friends in the middle of the country, not quite yet. Still upper 90s to near 100 from Dallas all the way to Omaha.
Yeah. We are owed several reward days, so it's good to see they're coming now.
Especially after, what was that, Tuesday here? Yeah. All right, Bill, thanks so much. Great to have you with us.
Coming up, a growing immigration crisis hundreds of miles from the southern border. More on the political battle as buses full of migrants arrive in cities like New York and D.C.
Plus, children of war, a look at life for some of the youngest Ukrainians impacted by the Russian invasion. Up next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is busing thousands of migrants to Washington, D.C. and New York City. It's his response to a record-breaking number of migrants crossing the southern border.
Now, officials from those cities are slamming Abbott, saying he's using migrants as political pawns. NBC News correspondent Zincle Esamoah has the story.
A New York welcome after a Texas rejection. On Wednesday morning, 3 more buses filled with migrants arriving in New York City. Women with children seen carrying little more than a plastic bag and a small collection of documents. This comes as Texas Governor Greg Abbott repeatedly sends thousands of migrants from the border state to Democrat-run cities like Washington, D.C. and New York, all since May. A move triggering sharp condemnation from New York's mayor on Sunday.
This is horrific.
The cities say lack of notice about migrant arrivals has meant a lack of preparation for city immigration officials.
A bus company that is chartered by the state of Texas is not communicating with New York City, so it's hard to know the time of arrival. This is a political stunt by Governor Abbott. He's unfortunately using human beings as political pawns.
In Washington, D.C., more than 5,500 migrants and asylum seekers have been transported to the nation's capital from Texas, prompting D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request assistance from the National Guard, a request denied by the Pentagon, according to a letter reviewed by NBC. As for Texas's reasoning, in a statement, Governor Abbott says, quote, in addition to Washington, D.C., New York City is the ideal destination for these migrants who can receive the abundance of city services and housing that Mayor Eric Adams has boasted about within the sanctuary city. But New York's mayor says it's adding strain to New York's already stretched thin social services.
A little over 4,000 of asylum seekers that are now into our shelter system. 4,000.
Mayor Adams announcing emergency measures to expand shelter capacity for asylum seekers on Tuesday, and now asking the federal government for assistance. All as the ACLU Texas and National call on the federal government to investigate Texas Governor Abbott. Abbott says he will not stop sending buses until the Biden administration changes its U.S.-Mexico border policies, a decision that leaves migrants and asylum seekers in flux. And right behind me, you'll see the transit hub of Port Authority right here in New York City. It's where that group of an estimated 100 asylum seekers arrived on buses Wednesday morning. Now, New York City officials continue to say that Texas did not alert them to the group's arrival. However, they were still able to provide medical services and other resources. However, the mayor's office and others have said they're worried they won't be able to keep up with demand. Back to you.
Zin Clay, thank you. Now to the war in Ukraine. The UN says about 2/3 of all Ukrainian children have fled their homes at some point during the war.
NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman is there with the story of 3 kids who are trying to navigate childhood in an active war zone.
My name's Zlata.
Zlata is 9 years old, from Mariupol, a city destroyed by war, now occupied by Russia. And tell me about the day that you left Mariupol. What do you remember about that day?
My dad yanked me out of bed and shouted, "Everyone to the floor," and we crawled to the hallway.
These are Ukraine's children of war, a generation growing up to the sounds of air raid sirens, artillery, and missiles. Many now refugees in their own country. Did you bring any of your toys with you from Mariupol?
No, we couldn't bring anything.
Mama. 7-year-old Katya is also from Mariupol. When war broke out, her parents went searching for supplies and water, leaving Katya alone at home. What were you thinking when you were all by yourself and you heard those loud sounds?
I thought, this is the end for me. I got scared. I began running around the house. I didn't know where I should go.
Her parents made it home, and the family went to join Katya's grandmother.
Soon, the electricity was gone. 2 days later, the water was gone. The next day, the gas went out. They cooked food on a fire.
Katya and Zlata made it out of Mariupol before the city fell to Russia, fleeing to Kyiv, where 10-year-old Maxim also lives.
I am 6th grade. My favorite objects of school is PE.
Before the war, Max liked playing basketball and rooting for the LA Lakers.
On the first day of the war, we went to a shelter. It stank of mold and mildew so bad.
The next day, Max's family fled Kyiv, making it to Romania, then on to Germany, where they had nowhere to live. He spent 2 months sleeping on a cot. What do you understand about why this war is happening?
I don't know.
Roughly 2/3 of Ukraine's children have had to flee their homes at some point in this war, according to the UN. Many of them now struggling with trauma that could affect them for years to come. Psychologist Anna Chasanikova works with kids traumatized by war. She's from Mariupol herself.
Before the war, children only saw military equipment on TV, in movies, and in video games.
She says kids under 4 don't yet understand the word war, but the older kids understand why they've lost everything.
Children fear they may run out of food, and they're afraid of running out of water.
Are you scared to go back?
Yes, because of the city. There's no city anymore.
Max's family returned to Kyiv after the Russians retreated to the east. What was the first thing you noticed when you got back to Ukraine?
Buildings destroyed by missiles.
When the air raid sirens sound, Katya says she's not scared, just angry.
I know I must be mature, because when I'm a grown-up, my parents won't protect me. I'll have to be fearless, like them.
Our thanks to Josh Letterman for that report. And one of those young girls told us the person she misses the most is her grandmother in Mariupol, who's stuck there with a broken leg, and she's concerned she will never be able to see her again.
Hope they are reunited. More international headlines now, starting with breaking news out of eastern Ukraine following a night of heavy shelling.
Yeah, Morgan Chesky joins us now from Zaporizhia in southeastern Ukraine with that and more. Hey, Morgan.
Hey, Jill Savannah, good morning. It has been an active 24 hours here in Ukraine, and we do have some new video just in after some overnight shelling that at last check leaves at least 3 people dead. And this is happening in that war-torn area in the eastern part of the country. Ukrainian officials say Russia is attacking more than 60 settlements and military targets in a bid to establish full control over the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk. Ukraine's military says it prevented Russian advances, though, towards several of those towns. And in North Korea, leader Kim Jong-un is declaring victory against COVID-19 and ordering the end of anti-COVID restrictions after apparently contracting the virus himself. At a national meeting, his sister Kim Yo-jong said her brother had been seriously ill with a high fever and blamed leaflets from South Korea for causing that recent outbreak. North Korea admitted to an outbreak of the Omicron variant of the virus back in May. Finally, to the Bahamas, where a French freediver just broke the deepest dive world record in bifins. 26-year-old Arnaud Giraud dove to a depth of 393.7 feet in 3 minutes and 34 seconds, breaking his 7th world record in his career and the 2nd one just this week. Giraud was competing in the vertical blue freediving competition, which takes place every year in the Bahamas. These freedivers, guys, elite athletes at the top of their game. Some have been known to be able to lower their heartbeat to as few as 14 beats a minute.
No way.
That's incredible. That is also the deep end of the pool right there. All right. Thank you, Morgan.
Very scary end. Thanks, Morgan. All right, coming up on Morning News Now, controversy in the classroom. Parents in several communities divided over plans to arm school resource officers with rifles.
When we come back, more on the fallout following a series of deadly mass shootings. We're back with a closer look at the school shooting crisis in America and the debate over how heavily to arm adults in schools. 2 county sheriffs are now weighing in with a controversial proposal.
Yeah, it includes wanting law enforcement in some schools to have long guns and AR-15s. NBC News senior national correspondent Carrie Sanders has the story.
A Florida sheriff is fighting fire with fire.
I firmly believe that if you do not meet violence with violence, you will be violently killed.
Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey posting this video on Facebook explaining why he is arming school resource deputies with long guns as part of their, quote, new style uniform.
A tactical appearance that clearly signifies we mean business when it comes to protecting our children, and a tactical advantage that gives our team the ability to instantly address an active shooter.
And he's not alone. A North Carolina sheriff taking similar steps, arming all school resource officers with an AR-15 rifle in the wake of a rise of school shootings across the country.
And I'm very distraught about the condition that our country is going in. If we don't put the brakes on and do an about-face, we're headed to destruction.
These actions taken in the wake of the Uvalde, Texas school massacre, where surveillance video showed officers waiting in the hallways, hesitating to take out the heavily armed gunmen.
If they do come to my school, I want my resource officers to have the ability to meet violence with violence.
He says the weapons, which will be paid for by donations from community members, will be kept in a gun safe in an undisclosed location at each school, and SROs will receive training. One local parent, a gun shop owner, says the move will keep his kids safe.
They should be able to have the same equipment that, possibly an active shooter would have, and be able to take them down from a longer distance if need be.
But the American Federation of Teachers has generally been critical of putting more arms in schools.
Conservative politicians know that this is really important. We have to keep kids safe. We have to keep schools safe. And so they're coming up with something to create more guns, not less guns. It's wrong.
But in Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine signed a bill into law that makes it easier for teachers to carry guns in schools. Instead of teachers needing 700 hours of training to possess a firearm on school grounds, they'll now be able to finish in 24 hours.
This training will be focused training specifically tailored to those working in schools.
The governor says schools are not required to arm teachers, but teachers still pushed back.
To introduce firearms into a setting where there are, hundreds of children each day is just not a wise course of action.
Our thanks to Carrie Sanders for that report. And Madison County Schools Superintendent says school administrators have been meeting regularly with local law enforcement officials to discuss these potential updated safety measures.
Coming up, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's impacting more than just your wallet. Up next, Bill Cairns is back to break down how the bill could help combat climate change.
Plus, a look at the hot housing market. Get this, inside the Metaverse, why some people are spending real money for virtual land. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back. If it becomes law, which appears likely, the Inflation Reduction Act would be the biggest climate investment in U.S. history.
So in this week's Climate Control, we're looking at what the law would mean for American consumers who want to make more environmentally conscious decisions.
NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns is back with us again. Bill, good to see you and have you here live with us for Climate Control. So one key feature of the Inflation Reduction Act is that it relies on incentives, not punishments, to try and speed up the transition to clean energy. Walk us through some of the things it would offer everyday folks.
Yeah, we want to know, like, what's in it for me, right? Like, how can I take advantage of this if I'm looking to get, say, an electric vehicle? So let's start there, because this is probably the most complex part of all of the climate benefits that are possible here. So you get up to $7,500 for new electric vehicles and up to $4,000 for used electric vehicles. But there are some catches in this. First off, it has to be manufactured in the United States. So that immediately eliminates a lot of very popular electric cars that have coming from other portions of the country. Also, 40% of the metals have to be mined of the battery in North America. If that's not possible, then you get only half of that $7,500 credit. So do your research. There are some popular models that won't be eligible for a couple years until the manufacturing process changes on that. And also, let's move into some of the stuff for your homes, too, because this stuff is a little more straightforward. This stuff is actually a little more easier for you to do. Let's talk about, things that can help your house, say energy costs by about 20%. You can get $2,000, say new windows, doors, insulation, a $4,000 rebate if it's 35% or more. And there's also some credit for heat pumps and stuff like that. And as far as solar goes, it still looks like that tax credit is going to be significant if you're looking at solar panels on your house. With solar, it's about 30% tax credits for installing solar panels. And you have 10 years, guys, to do all this stuff. And back to those electric vehicles, our friends at CNBC were telling us, if you have plans to get a vehicle already, don't wait for this to be signed into law. There's such a high demand and such a low supply. Just go ahead and do it. Don't wait.
Oh, yeah. The wait list for so many of these EVs is just crazy. And so much fine print here, Bill. So thanks for going through that with us. All right, let's talk about this crazy weather we've been seeing. So, I mean, this summer has been so brutal for so many people. We were talking about how tough Tuesday was here in the Northeast. I mean, cities just seem like they're setting records for extreme heat all over the country week after week. But tell us, put it in context for us. How unusual is this? How many records are being broken, and do you attribute it to climate change?
I think it's still important that we teach people the difference between weather and climate. What you're putting on your clothes today for is the weather you're going to experience. When we look at your whole summer, that's your wardrobe that you plan for, and that's your climate. So if you think it's been hot, let's take a look and show you if it actually has been or not. So we average 17 90-degree days, typically in an average summer in New York. We've had 19 already. We still have much of August to go. Philadelphia, you're 5 over your normal total already, too. In the Southeast, it's kind of the same thing. So this is how one way we can measure if it's been a hot summer or not, and if it's warmer than normal, and how much climate change can kick into this. So well above in Charlotte, Atlanta's already above, and you've seen all the stories from Texas this summer, and you know how bad the drought is. Typically, there should be about 18 100-degree days in San Antonio, and there's been 56. So yes, we can say it has been a very hot summer, and climate change does have a part in it.
Wow. The numbers tell the story, yeah.
In San Antonio, oh my goodness.
Bill, thank you so much. Good to see you. Let's jump back inside the metaverse. Today, as part of our ongoing series, we're going to bring you the fascinating story behind real estate in these interactive online worlds.
That's right. Parcels of virtual land are selling for very real money, and at sometimes eye-popping rates. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock explains.
In the white-hot Miami housing market, there's one thing that sets this still under construction property apart, and it's not the Lambo out front.
Come on in and let me show you around.
Welcome to Meta Residence 1.
It can be whatever the homeowner wants it to be.
It's the first property anywhere in the world about to be sold not just as a house in real life.
Over here in the kitchen.
But as an NFT in the metaverse.
As we come in here, we have the gym.
A digital asset with its own unique code that cannot be duplicated. Buy the NFT, a virtual house being built in a virtual world, and you get the real house and the Lamborghini.
So let's take a look at what a 7-bedroom, 9-bathroom house looks like, not just in this universe, but in the metaverse. Through these doors, you'll find all this furniture that's actually for sale in real life. And of course, a museum-quality LED screen to show what else? NFTs.
It definitely was tough at first to get people on board and, tell them, hey, I want to build this house in the metaverse. And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Gabe Sierra is the home's developer and an early investor in virtual real estate. Sierra and his partners are creating an exact digital version of this sprawling South Florida mansion in a nod to how popular the metaverse has become, giving us a tour in both worlds. The Sandbox and Decentraland are two of the biggest metaverse platforms, 3D interactive spaces where commerce is king.
Everything you do in the real world will have some variation of it inside the Sandbox, and we're talking about obviously gaming, but also education, shopping, socializing, everything you can think of. We'll have some form of it.
And in these worlds, virtual land is being snapped up at a fever pitch.
But this is a living, breathing, digital version of the house that you can build upon. You can add multiple stories to it. You can go crazy with it.
Sierra is building in the Sandbox and has invested in dozens more properties. There are 166,000 plots of land, a number that will never change. Individual lots have sold for thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Walking through the Sandbox with flip-flops on.
Part of the draw, location, being near early stakeholders, including celebrities like Snoop Dogg, who's offering concerts on his land called Snoopverse, and Fortune 500 companies like Adidas and Gucci.
Have you had a hard time convincing individuals or businesses to pluck down hundreds of thousands of dollars for virtual real estate?
I think people realize that the value of the land in itself is not that interesting. What matters for us and for the landowners is really the economic activity they're going to build on top of it.
Is it fair to compare investing in the metaverse now, like buying a piece of Manhattan before it was a metropolis?
It could be, absolutely.
But early adopters like Sierra believe wherever it does go, it's the future.
Where are we right now?
So we just landed in the nightclub underneath the house.
As I'm dancing, am I looking at a shark?
This is our shark tank, which has great whites and hammerhead sharks inside of it.
How many people are in this club?
There's hundreds of people in this club. Luckily, we don't have zoning laws in the metaverse.
A new way to look at real estate, but the land is limited and the rush is on. Sam Brock, NBC News, Miami.
Well, let's get to some financial headlines in this universe where in real life, back to school season's right around the corner. And this year it's met with the highest inflation in decades.
CNBC's Courtney Reagan joins us with that and more. Hey, Courtney, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Yes, so more than 40% of back to school shoppers say inflation will change how they shop for the upcoming school year. This is according to a new report from Bankrate. A third say back to school purchases will strain their budgets, and 95% say they're actively looking at ways to save money. The most popular ways are with coupons, discounts, and sales, followed by buying fewer items and buying cheaper brands. They're also stretching what they have for another year or buying more used or secondhand items and are using credit card rewards to offset some of the costs. Well, Microsoft is reportedly laying off a team of workers who are focused on winning back consumers. The company created the, quote, Modern Life Experiences Group in 2018 to target so-called prosumers or professional consumers. The cuts affect about 200 people who have been told to find another position at Microsoft or take severance pay. Microsoft recently cut less than 1% of its workforce and has been cutting open job roles as it slows hiring. Well, Coca-Cola thinks it's found the flavor of your dreams. The company is launching a new special edition soft drink called Dreamland. Coke says it, quote, bottles up the technicolor tastes of the subconscious. The new flavor is part of Coke's effort to attract new Gen Z consumers. Dreamland will be available in stores nationwide on Monday in both regular and zero sugar versions. It's gotten my attention. I will give it a shot. Back over to you.
It's an unusual way to describe a taste, but
isn't it? Joe's forced me to try weirder sounding.
What happened to vanilla or orange?
Too easy.
Right.
Too
Thanks,
easy.
Courtney.
We'll have to try it out. Thank you. Coming up on Morning News Now, a new show flipping the script on the typical Hollywood success story.
The Black immigrant culture is something that isn't often explored on television. So we really wanted to do that.
After the break, I'll introduce you to the show's co-creator who's working to diversify the faces you see on and off TV.
Welcome back. You might not be able to blame Drake for having trust issues after seeing his dad's tattoo. The rapper took to Instagram to throw a little shade at his father's tattoo of his face. The caption read, quote, "Why you do me like this? We family." Now, of course, Drake's father took to the comment section to defend the artwork, saying he's had 16 different tattoo artists try to fix the image, saying it was first inked 5 years ago. No word yet on if Drake's dad, Dennis, is planning a 17th attempt to fix it. You hate to see it, Joe, when tattoos go wrong.
Yeah, and I don't know if a 17th would make a difference anyway at this point. So, yeah. All right. Good for them. Thanks, Savannah.
Yeah.
Now to our new series, Flipping the Script, featuring artists in the entertainment industry working to shine a light on diversity. Enter Mike Goyo, one of the creators of the new show Send Help, premiering today on AMC's streaming network All Black. The show's main character, a first-generation Haitian-American man trying to make it in Hollywood. Now, Goyo shot to prominence while writing for hit shows like Insecure and Ginny in Georgia, but he tells me writing was actually his second act after originally planning to be a doctor and working at a call center to help pay off student loans. I talked to him about how he got his foot in the door and how he's holding it open for the next generation.
The show is called Send Help.
My mom's Haitian, so if it's not General Hospital, she ain't checking for it.
It's about a first-generation Haitian-American man living in LA, pursuing his life in Hollywood.
I was a series regular on a hit show.
So Send Help, what's the type of help he needs?
All kinds of help. Relationship help, mental help, help with his family.
Sure, I keep some things to myself, but what's wrong with that?
The need for help, that's probably something most of us can relate to, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. This story is based on Jean-Elie, who's my co-creator. So him as a Haitian-American man, I'm also Haitian-American, we wanted to really kind of like hone into the culture.
So many people say visibility is vital, and it's a slow changing process to get more stories told, right?
No, absolutely. Like the Black immigrant culture is something that isn't often explored on television. So we really wanted to do that. Being an immigrant, being Haitian American, and being able to have this career, I get a lot of young people coming up to me like, "Hey, I would love to do what you do. Thank you for being an inspiration." And that to me is like, oh wow, creating that visibility and letting other young Haitian American writers, immigrant writers know that they can also do this has been amazing.
Do you think things in Hollywood are changing when it comes to who's in front of the camera and who's behind the camera?
Yeah, absolutely. The needle's always moving. The needle's always moving forward.
But Goyo says more work needs to be done. It's why he created the Black Boy Writes, Black Girl Writes mentoring initiative to support and amplify marginalized voices in the entertainment industry. Recently, 14 young writers were selected out of 900 applicants.
900 writers applied for your mentorship program. What does that tell you?
It tells you there's a need, it tells you that people are really kind of like yearning for this opportunity and just needing a way in. And they're all extremely talented, all very talented writers. They just need the access, and it's just become more and more aware that the access is missing. So hopefully our program is providing that.
You worked on Insecure, Issa Rae's show. Help us understand just how groundbreaking Insecure was.
It was great to be able to work on, but even before working on it, I was just such a fan of the show. I just love what Issa was able to create with it, and the platform that she's been able to create for other writers and creatives coming up in the industry.
For any young writers out there who are watching this right now, looking at you and going, I want to be Mike, I want to be just like him, what's the biggest advice you want to give them?
The biggest advice I would give them is to keep writing. You're only as good as your last project, but even then, it's a muscle. You have to continue to work it. So my best advice, and the best advice I've ever gotten, is to keep writing.
Our thanks to Mike Goyo for taking some time to talk with us again. You can check out his new show, Send Help, today, streaming now on AMC's All Black. We were both struck by that 900 people applied. And I think it's a message to anyone out there who's in the business. If there's anything you can do right now to make a difference, it's mentor young people, especially young artists of color who are looking for that help, those resources, that guidance right now. You can make a difference.
Absolutely. I wonder how we even selected 14.
Those people, I bet, are pretty good.
That's
talented group of people.
I mean, and I'm sure there were so many more there, like you said, that are looking for that foot in the door, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah, very cool. Making
a difference, and has a great new show out, too.
Amazing interview and a kickoff to our new series, Flipping the Script.
More to come on Flipping the Script. Thanks to our team for putting that together. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.